Middle East latest, Hezbollah leaders replacement and replacement killed, Netanyahu says. Benjamin Netanyahu says the Israeli military has killed thousands of terrorists in its operation against Hezbollah in Lebanon, leaving the Iran-backed militant group weaker than it has been in decades. Listen to a daily episode on the Middle East crisis as you scroll. Netanyahu says Israel has killed Nasrallah's would-be successor. Benjamin Netanyahu says Israel has taken out the would-be successors of Hassan Nasrallah, the leader of Hezbollah who was killed in a strike on Beirut less than 2 weeks ago, without naming them. The Israeli Prime Minister shared a message in which he spoke to the people of Lebanon, urging them to free yourselves from Hezbollah. He said Israel has a right to defend itself and that it has degraded Hezbollah's capabilities. We took out thousands of terrorists, including Nasrallah himself, and Nasrallah's replacement, and the replacement of his replacement, Mr. Netanyahu said. It was not immediately clear who he meant, though Israel's Defense Minister Yoav Gallant said earlier that Hashem Sophy Ridge, Nasrallah's cousin and his potential replacement, was probably killed in a strike last week. Mr. Netanyahu added, "Today, Hezbollah is weaker than it's been for many, many years." Now you, the Lebanese people, stand at a significant crossroads. It is your choice. You can now take back your country and return it to a path of peace and prosperity. If you don't, Hezbollah will continue to try to fight Israel from densely populated areas at your expense. It doesn't care if Israel is dragged into a wider war. Lebanon could resemble what Syria has become, warns French minister. France's foreign minister has warned Lebanon could resemble what Syria has become if a ceasefire cannot be reached in the country. A hub of instability for smuggling, terrorism and a point of departure for a large migration of civilians seeking refuge in Europe, Jean-Noël Barrot told the French parliament. He also announced that France and Qatar delivered urgent humanitarian aid to Lebanon today. Earlier, Mr. Barrot doubled down on Emmanuel Macron's call for an arms embargo on Israel, saying it was also meant to protect Israelis. France, like most of the countries in the world, is calling for a ceasefire in Gaza and Lebanon, he said. And when one calls for a ceasefire, one cannot simultaneously provide arms to the warring parties. It's a question of coherence. Hezbollah's call for truce shows group on back foot, says U.S. Hezbollah's call for a ceasefire shows the group is on the back foot and getting battered, said U.S. State Department spokesperson Matthew Miller. As we reported earlier, Hezbollah's deputy leader Naim Qassem said the group supported the efforts of Lebanon's Speaker of Parliament to secure a ceasefire. For the first time, the end of war in Gaza was not mentioned as a precondition to halting the combat in Lebanon. Mr. Miller said, "For a year, you had the world calling for this ceasefire, you had Hezbollah refusing to agree to one, and now that Hezbollah is on the back foot and is getting battered, suddenly they've changed their tune and want a ceasefire. We continue to ultimately want a diplomatic solution to this conflict." Asked if the U.S. was talking to Speaker Nabi Berri about efforts in Lebanon to choose a new president, Mr. Miller said U.S. officials were having conversations with different players inside Lebanon, often through intermediaries. Those are ongoing. I don't think it's productive for me to read them out publicly, he said. It's been another busy day for news from the Middle East, as conflicts rage on in Lebanon and Gaza. If you're just joining us, let's catch you up on the key developments so far. Hezbollah successors slain. Benjamin Netanyahu said Israeli airstrikes killed 2 successors to Hezbollah's assassinated leader, Hassan Nasrallah. We've degraded Hezbollah's capabilities. We took out thousands of terrorists, including Nasrallah himself and Nasrallah's replacement, and the replacement of the replacement, Mr. Netanyahu said, without naming the latter 2. Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant said Hashem Sophy Ridge, the man expected to succeed Nasrallah, had probably been eliminated. Benjamin Netanyahu Reuters. 4th Israeli Army Division in Lebanon? The Israeli military said it sent the 146th Division into South Lebanon, the first reserve division to have been deployed over the border, and was extending ground operations against Hezbollah from southeast Lebanon into its southwest. The military previously announced 3 other army divisions were operating there, meaning that thousands of soldiers are likely on Lebanese soil. The aftermath of Israeli strikes on Beirut's southern suburbs? Hezbollah calls for truce. Hezbollah's deputy leader Naim Qassem said he backed attempts to secure a truce. For the first time, the end of war in Gaza was not mentioned as a precondition to halting the combat in Lebanon. He said he backed moves by Speaker of Parliament Nabi Berri, a Hezbollah ally, to secure a halt to the fighting. IDF bombs Beirut. Overnight, Israel again bombed Beirut's southern suburbs where Hezbollah is headquartered, claiming to assassinate top official Suhail Husseini. In northern Israel, warning sirens sounded regularly throughout today as authorities said Hezbollah fired almost 200 rockets. Rockets are launched from Lebanon towards Israel. Reuters. Iran warns Israel. Iran warned Israel not to follow through on threats of retaliation after its missiles barrage on 1 October. Its foreign minister said any attack on Iran's infrastructure would be avenged. Strike Iran's nuclear facilities now, ex-Israeli PM urges. Israel's former prime minister has said, now is the time for the country to attack Iran's nuclear facilities. Naftali Bennett said Israel had a once-in-a-generation opportunity to launch such a strike, saying it was the 11th hour to prevent Iran from going nuclear. Naftali Bennett. Reuters. He claimed Iran's proxy groups, Hamas and Hezbollah, had been temporarily severely weakened. If not now, when? Now is the time to strike Iran's nuclear facilities and regime, he said. He said the justification for the attack was as strong as ever after Iran fired a barrage of rockets against Israel last week. There have been concerns that Israel could target Iran's nuclear facilities in a retaliatory strike. The U.S. has said it would not support such action.